And now we have Sam. As I said earlier, Sam is an aspiring cartoonist currently attending college in North Virginia, where he moved with his family in 2006. He has always identified with the Buddhist path, and he narrowed his focus to the Jodo Shinshu teachings after visiting Ekoji Buddhist Temple for the first time, where he now attends regularly. Sam, will you come forward and share your story, please?
Hey y'all. Bring some of that Virginia back with me. I want to start off with a joke that I like to tell people who have not known me until the last 2 years. When I was a little girl, I wore my brother's hand-me-down clothes. They look at me and they're like, you weren't a girl. Like, yeah, okay. Where I lived at the time, in the United Kingdom, I lived in England from when I was 1 to when I was about 12. We wore uniforms to school. Meaning girls wore skirts and blouses, and boys wore polo shirts and dress pants. I was about 8 years old, and I decided that I didn't really like skirts. One morning, I put on my brother's old school pants from when he was 8 and left for school before my parents could object. Now, I've been thinking for a long time at that point that I was a boy and something just went wrong, and now I'm trapped in this weird alien body, and I have to figure out what to do with that. And I do want to say, that is not always the case with trans people, and my experience is my own only. So like Norio said, there is this tendency nowadays with more visibility for people to compartmentalize the trans experience. This is my experience only, and anyone else's identity is theirs. But I just assumed that I was a boy, and everyone else was seeing something else. So I used to tell my classmates this, and they were like, no, Sam, well, with no birth name. You're a girl, and that was just water on my back. I was just like, okay, I'll play the game. But like most 8 or 9-year-old kids, my knowledge of gender and gender expression was very limited. So once I was told this, I just assumed, oh, it's some mystical surgery in a far-off country or some spell that turns you into a boy. That must be it. But that meant to me that it was a fairy tale ending. We moved to Virginia around 2006. I was 12 years old. Having been raised in a school system with uniforms, I had absolutely no idea how to dress myself. I looked ridiculous. I was wearing these big cargo pants that were in for a little bit. I was still wearing my brother's hand-me-down clothes. At this age, people are starting to ask me things like why I wore pants all the time, why I didn't dress like a girl. It was also this time that I discovered girls, and I got a crush on this girl in my art class, and I took this as a sign. I thought to myself, I don't want to be a boy. I can't be a boy. That doesn't happen. That's a fairy tale ending. I just like girls, and that's okay. I had found this new identity which seemed to fit like a glove, and for a while it was comfortable. It was around this time that I first started to study the Dharma. I didn't have a teacher, as I didn't know any Buddhists in Virginia, so I didn't have any guidance, but I did have Borders. Does anyone remember Borders? It's gone now. The internet was a great resource, but it was huge and vast, and it was terrifying. So I went to Borders, and I found a tiny little copy of the Dhammapada, and that was my study. And it seemed like a good fit intellectually, and it was very comfortable. But despite all these things that I thought I'd figured out about myself, something felt off. I felt despondent all the time. I had crying fits where I would lock myself in my room until my father got so worried he'd actually take a screwdriver and take the doorknob off, just so he could open it and check that I was okay. I was a horrible student. I was a horrible student. I didn't do the work as often as I should have, and I barely passed the 8th grade, even with school assistance. To be honest, I didn't think I was going to live to see high school. I thought to myself that I was living the dream and that I had myself all figured out. So what was the problem? I was content in a way, but I wasn't happy. Soon, with much effort and some post-8th grade catch-up work, I finally found myself in high school. Here I was at the most LGBT-friendly school in the entire county, with lesbian and gay and bisexual friends, And here, I thought that I could truly be myself, and I could be out and proud, but I wasn't. It was around this time that I felt myself revisiting my childhood feelings. Like, every time someone would call for me at class, it felt like the wrong name. Every time someone would talk to me, say, hey, she is doing this, it felt wrong, it felt gross. I was presenting myself in my own image. I was wearing the clothes I wanted to. I was cutting my hair the way I wanted to. And that was great, but the world that was interacting with me was doing it in the wrong way. I hated myself so much. For my body, for not being taller, for not having a deeper voice, and for not having the courage to go seek out that spell, that mystery surgery in some far-off country. I started drinking a lot, and I would drink through midterms, I drank my way through junior year, and every time someone would address me as Miss, it felt like I was being scolded for being born as I was. It was senior year of high school that I began attending a Fugitt Buddhist temple. I've heard of Pure Land schools between middle school and then, but I had a very intellectual understanding of it. And to me, it didn't make much sense when I first came across it in books. But to see it represented in a much more human fashion, to see it as it is, it really struck a chord in me. I began to attend Sunday services semi-regularly, on and off, as much as I could get there. Our school's Gay Straight Alliance, I'm very proud to say, as horrible as the experience of high school was, our school's Gay Straight Alliance was the first in the county. And my friends who had graduated before me had worked hard to make it happen. I was at one of the meetings in my senior year. We were discussing gender identity. And for the first time since I was a child, I confessed to the people present that I felt very wrong living as a girl, though I had the caveat that I wasn't really sure. The teacher told me something that helped spark my first steps towards a transition, both socially and with this. She told me that if I wanted to live as myself, I had to find out who myself is, and to do that I had to step into an environment where most people don't know me, or step outside of my comfort zone. She was talking about college, and my mind wasn't thinking about college, I was thinking about the Marines, but that's another story. That didn't happen, needless to say. But the minute I set foot in my first college class, I laid out to my professor that despite my feminine birth name that was there on the roster, I was a man. I had yet to tell my parents anything about this, but at the very least, in the classroom, I could be who I've always wanted to be but could never express. This was amazing. I'd never felt so comfortable in a classroom in my life. And even though I get the occasional she, I was no longer at odds with the world around me, and this was new and exciting. My parents needed some education, but after coming out to them, they too accepted me as I am. Now, what I wanted to do was I wanted to get a cake that said "it's a boy" on it and just leave it out on the table and get them to ask me about it. That didn't happen. It was much more passive-aggressive than that. As time went on, though, I grew to wonder if living like this, living as a man, was some kind of dishonesty. I was really worried about this for a while, and with all this and the anxieties that came with my first forays into identifying as a male, I had a hard time accepting myself. My peers were cool with addressing me by the name I'd chosen, as were my professors, most of my classmates, and my peers. But I wasn't. I felt like I somehow didn't fit the bill as a man, a boy at most, but even then, it felt like some kind of logical fallacy, like I was being a bad Buddhist. And I had heard of the 18th vow before practicing Shin Buddhism. I had read what the vow was by itself, but I never gave it as much attention as I maybe should have. I understood the concept intellectually, but I never felt its effect in my day-to-day life, and I never stopped to really think about it. What helped me get a clearer picture of the concept was a conversation I had regarding gender identity, where I expressed my worries that I was somehow being disingenuous by presenting myself as a man and not being true to myself, like I was somehow being a bad Buddhist for being myself. I was told in different words that whatever I felt inside, whatever was going on in my head, to express that is to express myself as I am, and that doesn't make me any less true or false to the next person. And the best part is, not only is whatever I am fluid and impermanent, but regardless of what I am included in the vow. They say come as you are, right? We're not just the only ones who say that. I felt like I gained a new appreciation for not only the Dharma, but also myself. I'd like to thank you all for listening to me. Thank you all very much.